Magical items are incredibly powerful tools in Dungeons & Dragons, and players often seek these coveted treasures at every opportunity. But what if you could use these magical items to encourage more role-playing? Whether it's a gift from a mysterious patron, an heirloom passed down for generations, a treasure unearthed from a dungeon's depths, or an item stolen without a full understanding of its significance. Magical items can be powerful catalysts for some amazing roleplay opportunities. By weaving these items into your narrative, you can create some compelling reasons for your players to engage more fully with their characters and the story. But how do we introduce role-playing to brand new players who have never done anything like it before, or veteran players who are really uncomfortable stepping into the shoes of their characters or slipping on their characters' skin suits? Well, there's a visual for you. In true Saya fashion, we trick them. And we do this with a magical item, one specific homebrewed magical item. Welcome back to Tabletop Mayhem, where we explore the art of story building and gameplay in Dungeons & Dragons as well as other TTRPG games. I'm Saya, and if you enjoy these quick tips, tricks, and story building advice, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out. Our video today will be about one homebrewed magical item that can be used in two distinct ways to help trick our players into roleplay. Let me introduce you to the Flask of Divulgence. The flask is an ornate, unique silver vessel that has a swirling pattern that seems to shift and move when it's observed closely. When filled with any liquid, the liquid takes on a shimmering and iridescent quality. Once one drinks from the flask, they are immediately compelled to share a deep and meaningful secret. This magical item is loosely based on the Zone of Truth spell and heavily inspired by homebrewed items, spells, and magical items I found years ago on the internet. But like the Zone of Truth, it does have a charisma save of 14 for the first sip. How does this item encourage and support roleplay? This item was designed to gently nudge players into roleplaying by compelling them to share deep, meaningful, and private secrets about themselves or other people. Imagine this. Your players are at a tavern, better yet, a campsite where two of the players are on watch. One of the players reaches into his jacket and he pulls out this beautiful, ornate silver flask and takes a swig. What happens next? Well, naturally, they pass it to the fellow on watch and they take a swig. Suddenly, and they don't know why, maybe it's the relaxed companionship they find themselves in. Maybe it's the magical elixir they just swallowed, but they suddenly find themselves wanting to reveal hidden truths. Deep, meaningful hidden truths, either about themselves or someone that they know. This is such a wonderful and easy tool to get your players to open up and become more engaged with their fellow players, their characters, and the story. And the more that they drink, the harder it is for them to stop gabbing. The more and more they drink, the more and more under the influence they become, to the point where they could even be compelled to answer a question. How this works in game. Once you drink from the flask, you immediately feel compelled to spill the beans. It has to be a deep and meaningful secret, but it doesn't have to be your secret. You can choose to share the secret of somebody else that you know well, but the rules still apply. The secret must be a private, deep, meaningful secret. Feeling compelled to tell a secret doesn't mean you immediately do so. You do get a save. You get a charisma save of 14. If you fail, you do immediately start gabbing. If you pass, you're fine and you can continue to drink if you choose to do so. Each sip gets harder and harder to resist spilling secrets. You have your first save of 14, your second 15, and your third 17. And this is regardless if you've passed or failed any of the prior saves. It gets harder with every sip. Now, on your third sip, if you fail that save, you can be compelled to answer a question truthfully. You can probably tell that players are going to use this flask to their advantage in many different kinds of ways. Now, if a player drinks from the flask and they don't have a secret, they don't know a secret, they refuse to answer, or if they intentionally lie, it is an immediate level of exhaustion. But I will give a player the opportunity to come up with a secret about themselves if they don't have one. This item does require attunement. To become attuned to the flask, the owner must drink from the flask 3 times and share very deep and meaningful secrets and private information to the prior flask owner. It's like an equivalent exchange of information for the item. Once the character is attuned to the flask, it no longer has an effect on them, which can be really handy. I love items like these. I love to see what players do with items like these. Are they going to use them for good? Are they going to use them for evil? Are they going to use them in friendly ways, get to know each other? Or are they going to use them as scheming ploys to get information out of important NPCs and bad guys? The possibilities are endless, but they all require one thing, and that's roleplay. I did say that this item can be used in 2 different ways. The first was a tool the players can use. It was for the players. The second, it's against the players. This item has been tweaked quite a few times, and when it was originally introduced to my D&D world, it wasn't a tool for the players. It was a tool against the players, and it wasn't a flask. It was a cauldron. It was a witch's cauldron. I believe I called it the Cauldron of Secrets. The rules of the magic item are exactly the same with the cauldron as the flask. My players found themselves taking refuge in a hut with a sweet older lady. They were engulfed in a horrific storm and needed a place to wait it out. This sweet lady took them in and she fed them soup from her cauldron. The players gratefully took the soup and began eating, but with every slurp of soup, they started just sharing the oddest things. Can you imagine a group of heroes sitting around a table, slurping soup and just beginning to word vomit really private and strange things about themselves as well as other players at the table? It was hilarious. This specific session was so freaking funny, and it was so fun for my players. And by their third slurp, they were now compelled to answer questions. So now they were being interrogated. This was such an effective and fun bad guy tool. I think it's very important that if you enjoy the flair of an item, homebrewed or not, that you should be able to tweak it to make it fit into your campaign. And the reason why it went from being a cauldron to a flask is because I wanted it to be something that my players could use. And the reason why it's a flask and not a goblet or a tea kettle of some sort is that I knew that my party members would use a flask. Now that brings me to my second point. You have to make magic items in general, treasures, swords, weapons, scrolls, you have to make them appeal to your players. You don't want to give your players items they're just not going to use. Believe me, this item in a flask form has been used so many times in countless ways. It's one of my favorite items, and I'm sure I'm going to tweak it more and more. Regardless if this item is being used as a friendly means to get to know your fellow party members, to maybe the character doesn't know that the flask has a magical component and they can't quite figure out why people keep sharing all this private information about themselves with them. Maybe they have one of those faces, to using it strategically to try to trick people into 3 sips so that they can get really important information out of them. This item has so much roleplay potential. It's one of my favorites, and I highly recommend adding it to your tool bag. I really love this item, and I would love to know how you would implement this in your campaign. Would you use it for good? Would you use it for evil? Would you keep it a flask? Or would it become the teapot of truth-telling? Please let me know in the comments. I can't wait to read them. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and happy adventuring.